Okay, excellent. I'll keep my glasses on for a minute. Good afternoon. Stephanie Erickson. I'm a social worker and the author of, Plan for Aging Well. And here is my, I don't know what you even call these anymore. It's not really a podcast if there's a video. I don't know. Video cast, I guess. Plan for Aging Well. So excited today because normally any guest that I have on is in my age group. I'm 50, about to be 51 actually. And typically the people I have on who I'm speaking with are older, like me. Well, I don't consider myself old, but 50 plus. This is when we start thinking about aging and what we want and our older adults. And we don't get young people in particularly interested in this disease area because it's not in their mind of getting old, right? They're in the moment. They're worried about, being with their friends and graduating university and partying and going out and having fun, which is fantastic. And I'm happy that the generation has that energy. But one thing that this generation is doing, the younger generation, is their advocacy work in so many areas. It's really exciting. All of the advocacy for the Black Lives Matters movement, for the LGBTQ community. I mean, it's amazing what these young men and women are doing. And now to see a youth movement against Alzheimer's, this is so fantastic because I haven't really ever seen this. So today I have on one of the board, she's on the board of directors for the Youth Movement of Alzheimer's, Youth Movement Against Alzheimer's. She's the CEO of CareGen and the District Practice Manager of Carbon Health. We have Norma Bostarr. I didn't say that right. I did. Oh, why? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Norma Bostarr, you got it absolutely correct.
Okay.
We don't make it easy with the Youth Movement Against Alzheimer's as well. We know it's a mouthful. We commonly refer to it as WIMA. But thank you so much for having me. Like you said, I've got my own copy of your book. Great one. Mine's a digital copy so that I can annotate and make sure I have it with me wherever I go, which are a few places as we're currently in shelter in place. But yes, thank you so much for having me. Like you mentioned, the last several years have been marked by several youth-led movements. March for Our Lives, the Sunrise Movement, Black Lives Matter, period. There have been so many movements. And we've been working in this space since about 2016. And why not have something in caregiving that addresses the aging aspect?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Really, really happy about that. And you have so much energy. Can I just ask you, and I don't know if this is rude, but I'm curious I know you have your degree, so you have graduated from university. How old are you, Norma?
I'm 28.
28. Okay. So this is amazing. But I know that part of the work that you're doing is even with high school students. So before we get into your actual work, tell me a bit about your background, your schooling, your personal experiences that have driven you into this field of helping to find solutions and even creation of legislation related to helping those with the disease of dementia.
Absolutely. So I graduated from UCLA back in 2014 with a degree in human biology and society, which is a complicated and interdisciplinary way of saying genetics and public health. In my first role out of school, that's really where Alzheimer's went from being personal to professional. My grandma, Evelyn, who moved abroad with us, helped to raise me. She developed Alzheimer's when I was in my early teens, and so I initially helped to provide some of that caregiving before she moved back, and ended up staying with another relative before moving into some skilled nursing facilities. And so I have, it's always been a very big part of my own narrative. 3 of my 4 grandparents have had Alzheimer's or dementia. And so it's just something that I've been around. And coming out of school, I knew that I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could about Alzheimer's as quickly as possible. I spent 2.5 years as a clinical research coordinator, primarily working on Alzheimer's and mild cognitive impairment studies. And that's where I really got a good lay of the land of what do we know about, this disease and how it impacts people. And while I loved working with, people with dementia, their caregivers and providers, it became really clear to me that I was more interested in architecting change in order to figure out how we can change the way that we're providing care and supporting people, both in the clinic setting and externally in their lives. And so I kind of detoured from the clinical route Did some backpacking, moved up to the Bay Area with with bright eyes saying, I want to get into health tech. And I realized pretty quickly I had no idea what it meant to work in tech. So I started working for AnitaB.org, organizing the Grace Halper celebration, a gathering of 19,000 female technologists. I figured learning through the lens of women is a really great place to start. I then dabbled in some various tech projects up in the Bay Area. So Practice Fusion, kind of working with electronic health records. And I briefly actually pivoted to healthcare for about a year and a half to pursue a very core belief of mine that actually powers a lot of my advocacy as well. And it's that people power organizations. I think it's particularly true in healthcare, the people delivering care, the people building that product, they're really the heart and soul of things. And so I was head of operations and experience design for a company called Human Capital. We recruited engineers into early stage startups to build out their core engineering team and also managed a venture fund of $50 million. After spending some time there, I've always, the youth movement has really interwoven a lot of my own actions. And so backing up a little bit, when I transitioned out of Alzheimer's research, that's when I helped to start the youth movement against Alzheimer's alongside Nihal Satyadev, Hina Doshi, Kathy Rose, who's the current CEO. And it started as a club at UCLA's campus. And, Nihal asked for a little bit of help turning it into a nonprofit to go nationally. And so the initial intention there was building out the program. It's continued to exist to this day, and I've stayed involved through various capacities. And at the end of 2019, I knew that I wanted to return back into the healthcare space and to continue really pouring more energy into Alzheimer's advocacy. So I spent some time advocating across the country, and COVID hit, and it's kind of redirected my work for the past couple of months. I think that we have to deal with COVID in order to address a lot of these really core pressing issues in society that have really been undercovered. And so right now I lead a clinical team of over 100 people in San Francisco who deliver all of the testing in partnership with the city. So it's this beautiful combination of a private company. I work with Carbon Health, the city of San Francisco, and Color Genomics.
Wow.
So lots there.
Oh my God. And your energy, holy cow. How do you fit all these words in? I would love to get a word count of how many minutes you just spoke nonstop and what the word count was. Girl, you have got a gift of and I followed the whole thing. You have such a gift, and I see why advocacy is a calling for you, because you can clearly express some ideas, and the timeline was very easy to follow too. So kudos to you, Norma. I'm really impressed.
I got a little sidetracked on that one, so thank you.
That's okay. So let's focus, because I want it to be clear. You sort of talked about CareGen briefly, and it started as a club at UCLA, which I just love. This is what I love about university. You go there and you meet like-minded individuals. You have really big ideas. You feel very optimistic when you're in university. I'm going to change the world. And most of these ideas and thoughts fizzle out, but there are always a handful of people who are able to take these ideas and grow them into bigger things where they really lock in, sink into that idea. And it sounds like this is it for CareGen. So when it started as a group at UCLA, what was the mission at that time? What did you intend to do? Was it, because I know some of it had to do with enlisting the support of high schoolers to get them involved in respite, I believe, for people that have dementia, for the caregivers. Mm-hmm. Was that the initial conception of the idea, or was there more to it back then at UCLA?
Yeah, the initial conception was bringing to young people's attention whether or not Alzheimer's or dementia was something that impacted their family, was bringing to their attention that this was going to impact their lives deeply. And so the intention was raising awareness and providing solutions around aging that would support people. We were learning that a lot of our peers were actually caregivers. 25% of caregivers are millennials. They were people our age, and it's not something that's talked about very often. And so, when you think about that, 1 in 4 friends, 1 in 4 people around you, that's actually a lot of support that is needed. And so it started with an aspect of, let's acknowledge that there's a problem, and let's also start thinking about some creative solutions that will actually provide direct support to people who need it.
Amazing. So then how did you start linking that into high school, and how did you start? Because to me, I'm cutting myself off, but to me, one of the biggest challenges about this particular disease area in particular is that younger people, even though the statistics are there, don't really think of this as being something that impacts them, because even when their grandmother or their great uncle or their great aunt has this disease, they're still kind of removed from it. You know what I mean? It still is not really impacting them. Their mom's taking care of the problem, their dad's taking care of the problem, and they sort of are popping in and out of their own lives, understandably so. They're worried about themselves. That's all they're thinking about developmentally. That's where they should be. So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges. How did you go and capture a group of high school students and even get them interested in this cause? I can't even believe they even did they walk out of the first meeting when you started talking to people about it?
They spend, part of what you alluded to is that caregiving right now, a lot of people don't identify as caregivers. So a lot, even my own parents can be providing caregiving and they don't even acknowledge and accept that title. And so there's kind of that component of it. But high schoolers specifically, they're still living in their homes. They're still living with their parents, sometimes with their grandparents. And they're actually seeing that a little bit more firsthand. When you go off to university, it might be the case that you're not really acknowledging all of that extra care that your parents, or I guess my parents, might be providing to my grandparents. And so for young people, it was actually kind of a different way to get them involved in service, and with something that they were seeing in their own lives and connecting to a larger narrative. And so we have a lot of interest from high schoolers in being able to start chapters. And it's kind of that beginning, at least in California, in my own district, I needed 200 hours of volunteer service in order to graduate. And a lot of people who are maybe interested in health in some capacity are interested in opportunities beyond just volunteering in a hospital or maybe, doing a food drive. And so this kind of presented an avenue for people to get involved with something that they saw in their own day-to-day, and to be able to start connecting dots to something they could maybe participate in university.
So when you said in your district, you're talking about high school credit that you had to have 200 hours to graduate from high school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I did not have that in high school. I can't even imagine. I did nothing but think about myself in high school. I will be totally honest. I did not do any volunteering or anything like that. It did not even cross my mind. I was interested in the football game and cheerleading. My friends.
To that point, maybe right now, getting into college is so competitive. And everyone's looking for a different thing to be involved in, something that they care about, something that's unique to them that will also help them stand out. Starting a club at your high school, growing an organization, bringing it to university, those are all ways to show your leadership and then to cultivate community once you get to school. And that's another aspect that we do acknowledge of how does this serve you and your own ambitions?
Well, yes, in your own ambitions. And there's some people who might do it just because I have to have this on my college application, so therefore I'm going to do it. Maybe that is their motivation. But in the end of the day, that person and perhaps the other people that they include in that particular project, someone will be touched. It will motivate someone to do more, go into that in terms of their work. And it also teaches them the aspect of service about helping our community and reaching out. So this program that's across the country in different high schools, different chapters started, that's what I'm understanding. And they get some credit for it. And those high school students, they go through training program, and then they go to people's homes and provide respite. Is that what I understand?
So we haven't yet started the Care Corps at large across the country. That's part of the legislation. We do have 2 programs out of UCLA and USC. The ways that high school can be involved, they can be involved in advocacy. We can connect them to local things in their community. Right now, they are not delivering respite care. That's part of the larger initiative that we're building.
But But they could do things, I guess, when you're talking about advocacy, they could, for example, during the holiday time, get people to write holiday cards, have their high school choir or their dance troupe or wherever it is. I mean, now in times of COVID, it's not really working, but go to long-term care residences and provide social games and those kinds of things. I guess they could be doing, at least at a minimum. There are some active things they can be doing besides just giving information.
Yep, exactly. And the programs that we have, though, so it started at UCLA, where we partnered with them. Timeout at UCLA is what it's called. And it is an initiative where students at school can be paired up with older adults. And this is kind of where the core concept started, for 6 hours a week. 6 hours a week is free respite care that we provided to someone mild cognitive impairment, early stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, so that their caregiver could go out and do whatever they needed to take care of themselves. Some of them would paint their nails, some of them would run errands, some of them would take a nap, read a book, whatever care they needed to give themselves, they would get that 6 hours of free care. And in the meantime, our students at UCLA, we developed a program alongside different faculty called Brain Boot Camp. And so rather than just, hanging out, doing a puzzle, which are some of the activities that we do as well, our volunteers at UCLA would go through this program in order to learn, how can we use our time to do activities that will help, keep, the memory level where it is for as long as we can. What are different ways that we can engage and tools that we can give them while they were spending 6 hours a week with these older adults in the program. And so that is where it started at UCLA, really running through that aspect of it. We then expanded to USC, and we have another it's kind of in an academic institution program. Same thing, a loved one or a caregiver brings their loved one in and they get 6 free hours of care per week.
This is amazing. And I love it because you guys really are thinking that a lot of the times when, and this podcast is or video cast, whatever you want to call it, is part of that, is I'm trying to share information and give information. But how does that translate to actually like boots on the ground help for people? Because that's one of the things with caregivers is, yeah, blah, 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 keep talking about how much we need, but when are you really going to give it to me? And I love that you guys have taken your mission and actually done something which provides that absolute direct service to that caregiver who needs it, which is incredible. And now you've taken this concept and developed it much bigger and are pursuing legislation. And it's kind of like a Peace Corps similar process. So tell me about that, Norma, because I just cannot even believe that you group of individuals have put this together and are pursuing this. And by the way, if you guys ever need anything or someone else to be on your board of directors or any help you need, you let me know, because I am so behind this project. It's incredible. So describe to me what it is that you're doing.
So like you mentioned, a lot of people know of programs like the Peace Corps, like AmeriCorps, like Teach for AmeriCorps. We really view the Service Corps or the Care Corps as the next service opportunity. And so we have built the program. We don't see the importance of reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of infrastructure that exists. And so our initial Care Corps model really builds in to the AmeriCorps model. We worked very closely with California volunteers, Karen Baker, the previous chief service officer, in order to develop this. And essentially how it works is, folks coming out, graduating from high school, graduating from university, they will get trained, they will go through an internship and really understand what it takes to care for someone who has dementia. We are not looking to provide any clinical services, all non-clinical services in order to support them. And so after they get this training and they go through an internship program, they're able to provide respite so that the caregiver, whether it be, son, daughter, grandchild, spouse, is able to take a break and in some cases even go back to their job. And, what we're seeing, at least in California's state healthcare system, and it's mirrored pretty much across the country as well, is that there's this huge budget of $110 billion that goes into in-home kind of support service programs. And if you qualify for Medi-Cal, then you qualify for this program. But we get a lot of people who need to spend down and kind of liquidate their assets so that they can access the care that they need.
It's crazy.
So it kind of creates this like really big rolling problem. And so that's what we're looking to address with the Care Core. The goal is by providing this care, you're able to go back to work, maybe not leave the workforce in the first place, continue to generate an income, be able to support yourself. It helps the caregiver's mental state, and it allows folks to age in place. And when you're able to age in place, that also improves quality of life for the person with dementia, as well as saves the state and the country millions of dollars. And so at its core, it really is a program where it's, taking people, whether they need a gap year coming out of high school or college, and giving them the tools and a job with a sense of purpose. And they're going to be able to use this in their own lives later. It will most likely to support them, and they'll hopefully have services that they can fall back on so that they can stay in the workforce, and so it doesn't impact their own career and life trajectory.
So then let me just look quickly because someone made a comment I just want to see. So Rebecca said, so great to hear this. My business works with aging population, educating professionals and caregivers, and activities as medicine. The memory care industry needs these connections that you're talking about. Would love to discuss. That's great. So you've got someone listening and very happy and supportive with what you're doing. So talk to me about how you took this idea, and I like that you're funneling it into an already working system, which saves dollars and it's going to help, I guess, to execute that plan as well. And then it has to become legislation. Let's not get into, not that I understand it because I don't, all of the details about how something gets into legislation, but you guys have done some advocacy in the political arena to get this on the floor. What have you done, and where are you now in terms of making this a reality and a real program that people can apply for, be accepted, and actually do for work in that gap year, or even just for their own growth and development?
Yeah. So this was a great learning process, and also ability to bring young people into the space. We helped to develop the language in the bill. We've had some incredible supporters along the way. And it's bipartisan legislation. And we have, it has—
Does that exist now, bipartisan?
It does.
Sorry. I don't want to go off track. I'm sorry. It's just like anyways, with these times, nothing seems to feel very bipartisan, but go ahead. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Norma. I should
have
I threw you off. Sorry.
No. So Assemblymember Gomez Reyes has been she's really been our very big advocate, and the person who has moved this forward in legislation. And so we made it all the way up into the point until budget was allocated. And so without having any money allocated to support the program, it is stuck in that committee. With COVID happening, that's also been an element. Our state, California, went from being in a place where we had a tremendous surplus to where we are in debt. And so there's a lot that's really frozen there in order to, while the state figures out how it's going to balance its budget. And we've continued to kind of move things forward. Well, that particular piece of there's multiple ways to get funding for something. So the first piece is, will state Congress allocate funds to it? Another way that you can allocate funds is through the governor. And so we've been also very fortunate to participate. California is really, he started in 2019, so the pandemic has also impacted it. But Governor Newsom has said, hey, aging is it has the potential to be a big problem, and we want to lead the nation in how we respond and care for people as they age. He put together two task forces, a task force on aging and a task force on Alzheimer's and dementia. And we were able to sit on the brain trust for the Alzheimer's task force that was chaired by Maria Shriver, who's also been a very big advocate and supporter of ours. Maria Shriver, her family has the legacy of—
Yeah, I know of her very well and her work. Oh, yeah.
So this is something that is very near and dear to her heart. And so we were included in that conversation, and the task force ultimately presented, a 10-point recommendation to the governor. On the 9th point was the inclusion of a care core. And many of the points prior were different components related to training, related to campaigns that would actually probably fold into this program in order to help support it. And so that was presented to the governor this past month in November. Once again, kind of everything's at the table of when you have a small budget, what do you allocate money to? Do you allocate money to research, which is incredibly important to do research on, women, on people of color, and the disproportionate way in which this disease impacts those communities? Or do you fund this sort of program? And that's something that right now is sitting with Governor Newsom. And so that's what we've been working on in California, while kind of simultaneously moving on the more federal level, which I'll certainly share, but I just shared a lot, so I'll pause.
And I think what's exciting too about having the ear of Governor Newsom, who, by the way, I also sent my book to. I told you I've been picking political, well, I call them allies, but they don't know that they're allies, but I'm trying to make them allies for the concepts that I have about aging as well. And it's great that you have him on board with you. And obviously with COVID and budgetary issues, let's see if this can get funded. But if it can, and it can serve as that pilot for leading the rest of the country, a lot of times people want to see something work first. A vaccine is a perfect example. Well, let's see how the vaccine works for the first 100,000 people who take it before I'm willing to accept it. And a lot of things work this way for people. So perhaps if California can lead, the rest of the country will get on board. As we talked about before we went live, President-elect Biden has a bunch of money set aside that he intends to spend on caregiving. Hopefully that will still happen. He's got a lot of catch up to do with the economy. Hopefully that money will still be there. This sounds like something that could fit right into that program, while also simultaneously, meeting his stated intentions of helping young people go to school and make money and be productive and feel like they're giving service. I mean, it's all very aligned with a lot of the things he talks about wanting to do. What are you doing to try and get his ear and get connected there to get some of this program into that pool of money?
Yeah. I mean, to your initial point, their second bucket in the Biden-Harris transition program is economic recovery. And the third bullet point under that is the 21st century caregiver and educator workforce development. So it is there. And this has been a journey for us. Back in 2019, we attended the Us Against Alzheimer Summit. They are also huge supporters and allies and mentors of us for their summit and for their advocacy day. And so as part of that, we put together a petition asking, all presidential candidates to think about Alzheimer's and aging, really saying, hey, we're young people and we care about this, trying to go a little bit more of the traditional routes. And we put that together right before. We collected about 2,000 signatures, and we brought 50 young people to DC with us for this summit. And on Advocacy Day, we did all of our traditional knockings to go through and to talk to our own representatives. And we also, we entered Kamala Harris's office and Bernie Sanders' office and everyone in between with 50 young people to present this information, to say, hey, we're here and we want to talk to you about Alzheimer's. And that was kind of the initial aspect of just kind of switching the narrative of like, look at us, like we're not maybe your typical advocate. Earlier this year in 2020, I actually went out to New Hampshire in order to I ended up talking to 11 presidential candidates, Joe Biden included. And I got my name. I got really lucky in some cases. My name was pulled out of a fishbowl so that I was able to ask a question, for example, to Pete Buttigieg. And with Joe Biden on his way out, I just kind of yelled at him. I was one of the last person, or the first or last person, depending on how you look at it. And I just yelled, Mr. Vice President, I'm 28 years old and I have a question about Alzheimer's. And he was out. He was like backstage, and he turned around and he moved his security team and he's like, come here. And he took the time to explain, this is a problem. We're going to have hundreds of thousands of beds of folks who have Alzheimer's and dementia, and we need to think about how to better support this. And he referenced, creating something similar to a DARPA health initiative in order to really invest in problems that are disproportionately, solutions, maybe they're unlikely to succeed, but if we can solve it, it will change life as we know it. And he took the time to have that conversation. A couple weeks later, he mentioned Alzheimer's at the South Carolina debate. And since becoming elected, including his election, his speech and his Thanksgiving speech, Alzheimer's is there. It's part of their plan. It is top of mind. And so that is where we're working right now. They have a framework to say, hey, we want to do this. We know that we need to allocate solutions. And while they have not specifically outlined this particular program, we feel very strongly that the Care Corps is going to put people back to work, which is really important when you take into consideration the pandemic. It is going to give people a sense of purpose, and it is going to help develop a generation of people who have skills in this area and who also care about it. So not everyone is going to or necessarily should become a doctor or a social worker, but this will make it so we can hopefully build a generation of young people, lawyers, people in sales, people in marketing, people in engineering who think about older adults and how we can build a society that's inclusive of them.
Oh my God, amen, Norma. Like, you're giving me chills. This is so exciting for me. Before I had even learned about this program, I had a discussion with someone on another. They were interviewing me about my book, but we got kind of not off track, but I started talking about the innovation that's required to do something that we can't be thinking the way we used to think. And I went into this whole thing about, I don't understand why we don't have programs that are including children and high school students. Why aren't we getting credit for things? This is before I heard of your program. So it's like I'm looking at not the younger version of me, because I didn't have the motivation of you at 28, but the younger version in hindsight, I wish I would have been. But I just think you are amazing, Norma, and what your organization that you're part of is doing, it just brings me so much joy and happiness. I am on board 1,000%. Please let me know anything I can do to help support you guys. I really, really am hoping that this works. I want to say one more thing, because Rebecca put another comment in.
Can I check this as well before you read that comment? Would you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
We aren't the only people with this idea. Many people have proposed something similar. We hope to be the activating agent in order to also say, we want this. This will impact us. This will change many things. And so we don't think we're unique in this idea. We hope to just continue to breathe life in it in order to help actualize it.
100%. And I hear you, because a lot of times when people will say to me, oh, whatever, I read your book and exactly right, and we need to do this. And it's not, rocket science. It's not some new invention that I've created, some new theory. This is just my personal experience and me wrapping it into a package that can be delivered to people to read. But I have tons of colleagues who feel the exact same way that I do about stuff. There's so many people who are trying to create change and who have created lots of incredible organizations. But there has to be that one tipping point. There has to be that group that starts that opens the floodgates and gets it all going. And I think the energy of the youth is the way that we need to go, because I think we've seen tremendous changes in movements. Some of the things we've talked about, we forgot to mention climate change, and the movement there that the youths, that the younger generation is fighting for. So I think this is the way to go. And I just have so much respect for you. I'm going to connect you to Rebecca, because she's loving you right now.
Rebecca, I cut you off. I actually cut Stephanie off from cutting you off. So I want to acknowledge that.
Well, anyway, she's just loving this. She's in Los Angeles, so she's in California. She's in your neck of the woods. She wants to connect with you. I'll connect you too on LinkedIn, Rebecca, because she would like to be a part of this in any way too. I'm just really impressed, Norma. Thank you so much for all you're doing. What's the last thing that you would like to say before we wrap up this interview?
Yeah, I think just there's an element of action. And so we all care about something, and maybe Alzheimer's and older adults doesn't necessarily feel like your thing. But if you care about the economy and climate change and your family, there's so many, pick what you care about and act on it. And if you're looking for something to care about, we've got something for you. We would love to include you in the movement and to empower you. So that's just the main thing. Let's act.
Absolutely. And I agree. We all can pick something. There's lots of movements that I support. I'm not the Black Lives Matters movement, 100% on board, but I don't have the energy to pick a lot of things. So I've picked
Mhm.
my wheelhouse, my skills, and my experience, and I'm going full force with that. And I think you agree. I think that's exactly what you're saying is whoever you are, whoever you're out there, find something that you're passionate about, that you're angry about, that you love, that you
Mhm.
support, whatever it is, and do what you can that's within your own power, within your own circle, and even making it larger, like the ever entrepreneur Norma.
Mhm.
You're incredible. Thank you so much, Norma. Much respect to you and your team for what you're doing. And please keep me informed and let me get on that board. I want to be a part of this.
Well, and I also have some follow-ups. You had some amazing points in your book that I'd like to follow up on to make you have a wealth of knowledge and experience. And so this will not be the last time our paths cross. So thank you very much. Have a beautiful rest of your day and be healthy, well, and joyful.
You too, Norma and Rebecca. We're going to get in touch with you. Okay, take care, Norma. Thank you.
Bye.